I stood in the driveway of my childhood home on a Tuesday morning in late September. My dad, Gregory, loaded the last suitcase into the rental car. My sister, Amanda, 24 years old, sat in the passenger seat scrolling through her phone, smiling at pictures of Paris. Gregory turned to me, didn't make eye contact, and said casually, "You'll be fine on your own. We'll be back in 6 months." No hug. No explanation why I wasn't invited. The car pulled away. I was 27 years old, and I just realized I meant nothing to my father. I walked back into the empty house feeling completely numb. The silence hit me like a physical weight. For 2 years, I'd been living here after Mom died from cancer. I'd given up my apartment in the city, turned down a promotion that would have required relocation, all to help with bills and keep the house running. Amanda had moved out 5 years before Mom got sick and barely visited, maybe twice a year if we were lucky. But here I was, the dutiful son, and I got left behind like yesterday's trash. Those first 3 days alone in that house were strange. I kept expecting to hear footsteps, voices, something. Instead, I got nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and my own thoughts. I wandered through rooms that suddenly felt foreign. Mom's bedroom, which Dad had turned into a home office. The kitchen where we used to have Sunday dinners. The living room where we'd watched countless movies together before everything fell apart. By day 3, I made my decision. I couldn't stay in a place where I clearly wasn't wanted. If my father could casually dismiss me like that, leave me behind without a second thought, then I didn't owe him anything. Not my presence, not my help, nothing. I started packing my belongings into cardboard boxes I found in the garage. Clothes, books, the few possessions that actually meant something to me. I was in my childhood bedroom, wrapping Mom's photo frames in newspaper, when my phone started buzzing. Once, twice, then continuously. The screen lit up with notification after notification. Email alerts, text messages, voicemails piling up faster than I could process them. My stomach dropped before I even opened the first one. Credit card companies, banks, collection agencies. 37 emails in total, each one worse than the last. My hands started shaking as I opened my banking app. The joint checking account I shared with my father showed a balance of $0.14. $12,000. Gone. I'd contributed $8,000 of that over the past 2 years from my warehouse salary. It was supposed to be for household emergencies, property taxes, major repairs. My father had drained every penny. But that wasn't even the worst part. There was a credit card in my name from a company I'd never heard of. Capital Reserve Credit Services. $15,000 limit. Current balance, $14,873. The statement showed charges from the last 3 weeks. First-class airline tickets. Luxury hotels in London and Paris. Michelin-starred. Restaurant. Désigné boutique. I never applied for this card. I never even received it in the mail. With trembling fingers, I pulled up my credit monitoring app. My score had plummeted from 740 to 530 in less than a month. There were multiple hard inquiries I didn't authorize. New accounts I didn't open. My pristine credit history destroyed. Then I remembered Mom's inheritance. After she passed, her life insurance policy and savings were supposed to be split between Amanda and me. $22,000 total. My father was the executor of the estate. I logged into the estate account, even though I already knew what I'd find. 0 balance. Withdrawn 4 weeks ago. Every cent gone. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, surrounded by half-packed boxes, trying to process what this meant. My father hadn't just abandoned me. He'd systematically robbed me. He'd taken my savings, stolen my identity, maxed out credit cards in my name, and stolen my inheritance. All to fund a European vacation with my sister. The casual cruelty of it hit me harder than the financial devastation. You'll be fine on your own. He'd known exactly what he was doing. He'd planned this. The joint account, the credit cards, the timing of the trip, all of it calculated. I tried calling his cell phone. It rang once, then went to voicemail. He'd blocked my number. I looked around my childhood bedroom, at the boxes, at the life I was packing up, at the emptiness of it all. I had $340 in my personal checking account. My next car insurance payment was due in 6 days. My phone bill was coming up. I'd been planning to put down deposits on apartments, first month and security, maybe $2,500 total for a decent place. Now, I had nothing. Worse than nothing. I had debt I didn't create, and a credit score that would make landlords laugh in my face. The sun was setting outside my window, casting long shadows across the room. I sat there in the growing darkness, holding my phone, staring at email after email from collection agencies demanding payment for purchases I never made. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. My father had done this on purpose. He'd waited until he was safely out of the country. He'd blocked my number so I couldn't reach him. He'd poisoned my credit so I'd have nowhere to go. And he'd taken every dollar so I couldn't fight back. I was supposed to be fine on my own. But he'd made sure I'd have nothing to be fine with. I had 1 week. That's what I'd told myself when I decided to leave. 1 week to find a place, pack everything, and get out of this house that no longer felt like home. But with my destroyed credit score and almost no money, finding housing felt impossible. I spent 2 days calling apartment complexes. The conversations all went the same way. They'd sound interested until I mentioned my credit situation. Then came the awkward silence, the apologetic tone, the "we'll call you back" that never came. My credit score of 530 was an automatic disqualification for every decent place I contacted. Desperate, I started looking at rooms for rent on local classified sites. That's where I found Donald Burke's listing. Private room in a shared house, $750 per month. The ad said he was flexible on credit checks, looking for someone reliable and quiet. I called him immediately. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Donald was maybe 50, 55, wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt and jeans. He had a friendly smile and a firm handshake. I liked him right away, which should have been my first warning. I explained my situation honestly, told him about my credit score, about the identity theft I was dealing with, about needing a place quickly. Donald listened, nodding sympathetically. He said he understood. He'd been through hard times himself, knew what it was like when life kicked you down. He made me feel heard, understood. Looking back, I realize he was just a good con artist. The room was in a house about 20 minutes from my warehouse job. Small but clean, he said. $750 a month was reasonable for the area. But he needed first month, last month, and security deposit up front. $2,250 total. I didn't have it. Not even close. But I needed a place to live, and Donald seemed willing to work with me on the credit issue. So I did what desperate people do. I scrambled. Over the next 3 days, I sold everything of value I owned. My gaming console went for $200 to a teenager who met me in a grocery store parking lot. My laptop, which I'd bought 2 years ago for $800, sold for $350 on a resale site. I sold my desk, my bookshelf, some furniture I'd kept in storage. Every dollar went into a growing pile. I borrowed $500 from Marcus, a coworker at the warehouse. We weren't close friends, but we got along well enough. He seemed hesitant, but eventually agreed, said he understood family problems. I promised I'd pay him back within 2 months. The hardest part was pawning Mom's wedding ring. It was the only piece of jewelry she'd left me. Amanda got the necklaces and bracelets, but I'd kept the ring. It was simple, elegant, just a small diamond on a gold band. I brought it to a pawn shop on the east side, a place called Helen's Jewelry and Loan. Helen was maybe 70, with kind eyes and weathered hands. She examined the ring carefully, then looked at me. "This meant something to someone," she said quietly. "My mother," I managed to say. "She passed 2 years ago." Helen was quiet for a moment. "And you need the money." "I need a place to live." She could have lowballed me. Pawn shops usually do. But Helen gave me $900, which was more than fair. "You have 90 days to buy it back," she said, writing up the ticket. "I'll hold it for you. And I hope things get better, son." I wanted to thank her properly, but my throat was too tight. I just nodded and left. With the borrowed money, the sold items, and the pawned ring, I had exactly $2,250. It was everything I had left in the world. Everything. I met Donald at the house 3 days later. The neighborhood was older, houses close together, but it seemed safe enough. Donald was waiting on the porch, all smiles. I handed him a cashier's check for the full amount. He pocketed it, gave me a single key, and said he'd email me a receipt and rental agreement by the end of the day. The room was exactly as he'd described. Small, maybe 10 feet by 12 feet, with a mattress on the floor, one electrical outlet, and a tiny closet. A window looked out onto the side yard. The shared bathroom was down the hall. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Or so I thought. I spent the afternoon moving my boxes in. Everything I owned fit in that small room with space to spare. As I stacked the last box in the corner, I felt something like relief. It wasn't home, but it was shelter. It was a foundation to rebuild from. I spent the next 3 days settling in. Found my rhythm with the shared bathroom. Met one of the other housemates briefly, a quiet guy who worked nights. Kept mostly to myself. I was working long shifts at the warehouse, trying to save every dollar I could. Eating ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, walking instead of driving to save gas. On the 4th day, I came home from my shift at 6 in the evening. I was exhausted, looking forward to a hot shower and maybe getting some sleep. I put my key in the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again, thinking maybe I was just tired and clumsy. The key wouldn't even go all the way into the lock. My stomach started churning. I rang the doorbell, knocked, rang again. The door opened. A woman I'd never seen before stood there, maybe 60 years old, with gray hair and a confused expression. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I live here," I said. "In the room down the hall. I just need to get in." Her confusion deepened. "I'm sorry, but no one rents rooms here. This is my house." My heart stopped. "What?" "No. I rented a room from Donald Burke. 4 days ago. I paid him $2,250. The woman's face changed. Anger mixed with sympathy. "Donald Burke is my nephew. He was house-sitting while I visited my daughter in Oregon for 2 weeks. He had no authority to rent rooms to anyone." The world tilted. "But I paid him. I have a key. That's my spare key. I need it back." I stood there on the porch, trying to make sense of this. "Where's Donald?" "I don't know. He took off yesterday. Won't answer my calls." "You're the 3rd person who's come to the door today with the same story." 3 other people. Donald had scammed at least 4 of us, probably more. My legs felt weak. The woman, who introduced herself as Patricia Thompson, invited me in. She was furious at her nephew, but sympathetic to my situation. She showed me the house, explained she'd been gone for 2 weeks, came back to find Donald had changed the locks and rented out 3 of her 4 bedrooms to strangers. He'd collected deposits and rent from everyone, then disappeared. I called the police from her kitchen. An officer came out, took a report, barely seemed interested. He told me what I already knew. It was a civil matter. I could try to sue Donald, but good luck finding him. He'd done this before, apparently. Had warrants in 2 other counties for similar scams. The officer said they'd add it to his file. My hands were shaking as I signed the police report. $2,250. Every cent I'd scraped together. The money from selling my possessions. The borrowed $500 from Marcus. The $900 from pawning my mother's ring. Gone. Just gone. Patricia felt terrible. She offered to let me stay one night while I figured things out, but she couldn't do more than that. She had her own tenant screening process, background checks, references, and she needed time to process what her nephew had done. I understood. I thanked her and told her I'd figure something out. I loaded my boxes back into my car as the sun set. Everything I owned, back in my vehicle. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, just staring at the steering wheel. I had $47 left in my checking account. That was it. $47 to my name. I couldn't afford a motel. Even the cheapest places were $60 a night. I drove to a grocery store parking lot, parked in the back corner, and climbed into the back seat. The boxes filled most of the space. I curled up in what little room remained, using my jacket as a blanket. It was early October. The temperature dropped to 48 degrees that night. I shivered until dawn, unable to sleep, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. The next morning, I sat in my car and made a list of people I could call for help. The list was shorter than I'd hoped. My father had effectively isolated me over the past 2 years. Between caring for Mom and dealing with the house, my social circle had shrunk to almost nothing. But there was Rachel, my girlfriend of 14 months. We'd met at a community barbecue, hit it off immediately. She was a dental hygienist, smart and funny and kind. We'd been getting serious before Mom got sick. I'd pulled back during those hard months, focused on caregiving, and Rachel had been understanding. Over the past 6 months, we'd been rebuilding what we had. She'd even mentioned moving in together, looking at places, making plans. I called her from the parking lot of a fast food restaurant, using their Wi-Fi since I couldn't afford to use my phone's data. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Collins, hey. I wasn't expecting to hear from you this early." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Rachel, I need to talk to you about something. Are you free?" "Sure. What's up?" I told her everything. My father leaving, the stolen money, the identity theft, the housing scam, living in my car. The words came out in a rush, barely coherent. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. "Rachel, I'm here," she said slowly. "I'm just processing. I know it's a lot. I just need some help getting back on my feet. Maybe I could stay with you for a few weeks while I figure things out? I'll pay rent as soon as I can. I just need a couch, somewhere to shower, somewhere safe." Another long silence. My heart was pounding. "Collins, I need to be honest with you about something." Those words. I knew what was coming before she said it. I've been seeing someone else. For about 2 months now. The parking lot seemed to blur around me. "What?" "His name is Derek. He's a pharmaceutical rep. We met at the office. Collins, I'm sorry, but he has stability. He has a future. And you have too much baggage. This thing with your father, the money problems, the family drama, I just can't deal with it." "Family drama?" My voice came out flat. "Rachel, my father committed identity theft. He stole everything from me. I know, and I'm sorry that happened to you. I really am. But I have to think about my own future. Derek and I are talking about moving in together. It's serious. And I think it's better if we just end things cleanly. I wish you luck, Collins. I really do." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my dead phone, staring at the screen. 14 months. We'd talked about futures, about plans, about building something together. And she'd been cheating on me for 2 months while I was dealing with the worst crisis of my life. I wanted to feel angry, but I was too tired, too empty. I just added it to the growing pile of betrayals. Next, I called Marcus. I needed to explain I couldn't pay back the $500 right away, that I'd need more time. Maybe we could work out a payment plan. Marcus answered on the first ring. He sounded uncomfortable. Collins, listen. I was actually going to call you. I need to talk to you about the money I borrowed. Yeah, about that. Management called me into the office yesterday. They asked me questions about you, about your reliability, your character. Someone called the company and told them you'd been stealing from family members. My stomach dropped. What? Who would say that? I don't know, man. But they asked if I'd loaned you money, and I had to tell them the truth. I told them you'd borrowed $500. Now they're looking at me funny too, like I'm associated with someone who's under investigation or something. Marcus, that's not true. My father stole from me, not the other way around. I don't know what's true anymore, Collins. I just know I can't be involved in this. I need that $500 back. Like, now. I don't have it. I was scammed out of everything. That's not my problem. You borrowed money from me, and I need it back. If I don't get it by the end of the week, I'm filing in small claims court. Marcus, come on. We're friends. No, man. We were co-workers who got along okay. That's different from friends. And right now, I can't afford to be connected to whatever mess you're in. Get me my money. He hung up. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just sat there in my car, watching people walk in and out of the restaurant. Normal people with normal problems. People who had homes to go back to. The next day, I got called into my supervisor's office at the warehouse. Bill Crawford was a stern man in his 50s, ex-military, ran a tight ship. I'd worked there for 3 years, never had a problem, always showed up on time. Bill didn't waste words. Collins, we've received some concerning information about you. What kind of information? Someone contacted our HR department claiming you're under investigation for fraud, that you've been stealing from family members and defaulting on debts. There it was. My father's handiwork. That's not true, sir. I'm the victim of identity theft. My father stole money from me and used my credit. I've filed police reports. Bill's expression didn't change. I'm not saying I believe it or don't believe it, but the company has to take these things seriously. We're putting you on a reduced schedule while we evaluate the situation, 25 hours a week instead of 40, and we're moving you to late nights and early mornings. Sir, I need those hours. I can't afford to lose 15 hours a week. Should have thought about that before getting involved in whatever this is. We'll reevaluate in a month. That's all. I was dismissed. Just like that. My income cut by more than a third. The worst shifts, the ones nobody wanted, graveyard and early morning. I was being pushed out, and we both knew it. That evening, an email arrived in my inbox from Amanda. The first contact since they'd left for Europe almost 4 weeks ago. The subject line read, "Stop." The email was short and cold. Collins, Dad told me what you've been doing. Calling his work, calling the credit card companies, spreading lies about him. I know you're upset he didn't invite you to Europe, but that doesn't give you the right to make up stories and try to ruin his reputation. He showed me the bank statements. You're the one who took money from the family account. You maxed out those credit cards yourself, and now you're trying to blame him. I always knew you were manipulative, but this is too much. You need help, Collins. Serious help. Do not contact me or Dad again. I'm blocking your number. I read it 3 times. She believed him. Or she was in on it. Either way, my sister had chosen sides, and it wasn't mine. I tried one more person, my cousin Tyler. He was 32, my mother's nephew, successful software engineer with a wife and 2 kids. We'd grown up close, more like brothers than cousins. If anyone would help, it would be Tyler. I called him that night, sitting in my car in the warehouse parking lot after my shift ended at 2 in the morning. Collins? It's late. Is everything okay? Tyler, I need help. Can I come stay with you for a little while? I'll explain everything when I see you. A pause. Collins, I talked to your dad last week. My blood went cold. What did he say? He said you've been having some mental health issues, that you've been acting unstable, making accusations, asking family members for money. He said you might try to manipulate me, that I should be careful. Tyler, none of that is true. He stole from me. He destroyed my credit. I have evidence. I want to believe you, Collins. But your dad seemed really worried about you. And my wife, she doesn't feel comfortable having you around the kids right now, not until you get some help. I can pay for a few therapy sessions if that would help. I don't need therapy. I need a place to sleep. I'm sorry, Collins. I really am. But I have to think about my family first. Get some help, okay? Then we can talk. He hung up gently, which somehow made it worse. I sat there in the dark parking lot, my phone at 17% battery. I was out of people to call. My father had systematically contacted everyone, poisoned every relationship, cut off every avenue of support. He'd planned this, laid the groundwork, made sure I'd have nowhere to turn. My next shift started in 5 hours. I needed sleep, but the car was freezing. I started the engine just to run the heat for a few minutes, watching the gas gauge drop. Every gallon of gas was money I didn't have. I thought about my father, somewhere in Europe, probably sleeping in a comfortable hotel bed, spending money he'd stolen from me. And I thought about how carefully he'd orchestrated all of this. The timing, the lies, the isolation. He'd wanted me to fail. He'd wanted me to have nothing and no one. And so far, his plan was working perfectly. The collection calls started coming constantly, 5, 6, 7 times a day. Different agencies, different account numbers, all demanding payment. I'd been ignoring them, letting them go to voicemail. But by the second week of living in my car, I was so worn down I finally answered one. Is this Collins speaking? Yes. This is Jennifer from Statewide Recovery Group. I'm calling about an outstanding personal loan in your name. The current balance is $28,342. When can we expect payment? The number hit me like a punch. I never took out a personal loan. Sir, I have the loan agreement right here. It was originated 7 months ago through Premier Financial Services. The signature matches your legal name. 7 months ago. I'd been living at home, helping with the house, taking care of everything. Can you tell me what date exactly? She gave me the date. I remembered that day. My father had asked me to sign some property tax documents. Said he needed my signature as a resident of the house. I'd signed without reading them carefully. I trusted him. I need copies of everything, I said. Email them to me. She did. I went to the library, used their public computers, and printed everything out. The signature looked like mine because it was mine. But I'd never seen the actual loan documents. My father had somehow swapped them, had me sign loan applications instead of property documents. I pulled my full credit report, the free one I was entitled to annually. What I found made my hands shake. 3 fraudulent accounts. The credit card I already knew about. $15,000. The personal loan. $28,342. And something new. A home equity line of credit on my father's house. $45,000. My name was listed as co-borrower. Total fraudulent debt. $88,342. $88,000 of debt I didn't create, tied to my name, destroying my credit, following me everywhere. I dug deeper into the credit report, looking at the details of each account. There were email confirmations for all of them, sent to an address I didn't recognize, collinsham_financial@webmail.com. I'd never created that email account. I tried logging into it using password reset. The security questions were things only my father would know. His mother's maiden name, the street he grew up on. After 3 tries, I got in. What I found made me physically sick. Months of emails, planning emails, between my father and Amanda. The earliest one was from 10 months ago. Subject line: Collins credit. Amanda checked his credit report. Score is 740. He qualifies for pretty much anything. I think we can get at least 60,000, maybe more. He's too trusting to notice. Amanda's response: Are you sure about this? What if he finds out? He won't. We'll be in Europe. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. And honestly, after all the free rent he's gotten, he owes us. I scrolled through months of correspondence. Amanda researching which lenders had the weakest identity verification. My father practicing my signature. Discussions about how to maximize the amount they could steal. One email from Amanda, dated 6 months ago. What about the inheritance money? Can you access that? Gregory's response: Already done. Transferred it yesterday. Collins doesn't check that account. He trusts me with everything. Makes it easy. Another email from 3 months ago. My father to Amanda. Got him to sign the HELOC papers today. Told him they were property tax documents. He didn't even read them. We're up to 88,000 now. More than enough to clear my debts and fund the trip. His debts. I scrolled back further and found more emails. My father had gambling debts. Serious ones. $22,000 to a bookie named Vincent. $18,000 in casino markers from 3 different casinos. $35,000 to someone named Roy from a private poker game operation. $75,000 in gambling debts. He'd used my identity to cover his gambling addiction. There was more. Emails discussing their plan after the Europe trip. My father wrote, When we get back, Collins will probably have figured everything out. We'll file bankruptcy under his name. I've been researching it. We can claim he was financially irresponsible, got in over his head. He'll have to deal with the bankruptcy on his record, but we'll be clear. If he tries to fight it, we just say he authorized everything, his word against ours. Amanda had replied, What if he goes to the police? He won't. He's too loyal to family. And even if he does, it's a he said, she said situation. We have signatures. We have account access. We can claim he knew about everything. They'd planned to destroy my credit, saddle me with bankruptcy, and walk away clean. I sat in the library, staring at the screen, feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a mistake. This was calculated, premeditated, financial abuse. They'd spent months planning how to ruin my life. I saved everything to a USB drive. Every email, every document, every piece of evidence. Then I looked up consumer rights attorneys in the area. Most wanted retainers of $3,000 to $5,000. I had $35 to my name after buying the USB drive and paying for prints at the library. But I found one lawyer who did free consultations, Jordan Walsh, a younger attorney who listed consumer fraud as a specialty. I called and made an appointment for the next day. Jordan's office was in a converted house downtown, small but professional. Jordan was maybe 30, 35, with an earnest face and a firm handshake. I spread out all my evidence on the desk. Jordan spent 40 minutes reviewing everything. The emails, the forged signatures, the fraudulent accounts, the planning documents. When finished, Jordan looked up at me with something like anger in his eyes. This is identity theft. Wire fraud. Forgery. Your father could go to prison for this. Can you help me? Yes. But you need to understand what you're up against. You'll have to file a police report against your own father. You'll have to dispute every account, which takes months. Meanwhile, the debt is legally yours until proven otherwise. Collections will continue. Your credit stays destroyed through the whole process. How much do you charge? My standard retainer is $5,000. But looking at this case, seeing what they did, I might be able to work something out. If you can come up with $2,000, I'll take the case, and we'll work out payments for the rest. $2,000. I didn't have $20. I can't afford that right now. Jordan nodded slowly. I understand. Look, I'll be honest with you. You could try to settle with your father privately. Confront him. Tell him you have evidence. See if he'll pay you back to avoid prosecution. Or you pursue criminal charges, which could take years and cost money you don't have. Neither option is great. I left Jordan's office with a business card and no solutions. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I couldn't afford to fight this properly. My father had made sure of that. That evening I got a text from my supervisor at the warehouse. Collins, due to continued concerns about your reliability and the ongoing issues, we're terminating your employment effective immediately. Final paycheck will be direct deposited minus the cost of your uniform and equipment. This decision is final. I read the text 3 times. I just lost my job. My income was gone. 2 hours later, my phone showed the direct deposit, $362, after uniform deductions. It was November now. I'd been living in my car for 4 weeks. I'd lost my job, my income, my credit, my savings, my possessions. The temperature was dropping into the 30s at night. I had $362, a USB drive full of evidence I couldn't use, and a phone that would be shut off in 3 days when the bill came due. I sat in the library parking lot after it closed at 9 p.m., watching my breath fog in the cold air. The evidence of my father's crimes was right there on the USB drive in my pocket. But evidence without a lawyer, without money, without resources, was just data. It couldn't help me. My father had planned everything perfectly. He'd isolated me, destroyed my support system, stolen everything, and left me with no way to fight back. I started the car to run the heat, watching the gas gauge drop. Quarter tank left. Maybe 3 more days of occasional heating before I'd have to choose between gas for warmth and gas to drive. For the first time since this started, I understood what my father had been trying to do. He hadn't just wanted to steal from me. He'd wanted to break me completely, to leave me with nothing and no one, to make sure I couldn't fight back, couldn't recover, couldn't even survive. And I was starting to think he might succeed. I woke up shivering so hard my teeth rattled. The windows of my car were covered in frost on the inside. My breath came out in white clouds. I checked my phone. 23 degrees outside. 6:15 in the morning. I'd been living in my car for 6 weeks now. My chest hurt when I breathed. The cough I'd been ignoring for a week had gotten worse. Each breath felt like someone was pressing knives into my lungs. I tried to sit up and the world spun. Something was very wrong. I managed to start the car, get the heat running. My hands were shaking too much to hold the steering wheel properly. I needed help. I needed a hospital. The drive to the emergency room took 12 minutes. I barely remember it. I parked in the first spot I could find and stumbled through the automatic doors. The triage nurse took one look at me and called for help immediately. Temperature, 103.4 degrees. Blood pressure dangerously low. Oxygen saturation at 87%. Severe pneumonia, the doctor told me an hour later. I was in a bed, hooked up to IV antibiotics, oxygen mask on my face. Likely from prolonged exposure to cold and stress. Your immune system is compromised. We need to admit you for at least 3 days. How much will that cost? The words came out rough through the oxygen mask. The doctor hesitated. Do you have insurance? No. Then we'll have the financial counselor talk to you. But you need treatment. This is serious. Without antibiotics, pneumonia like this can be fatal. Fatal. That word hung in the air. I'd been so focused on surviving day to day that I hadn't realized I was actually dying. They admitted me, got me into a room, started strong IV antibiotics, gave me breathing treatments. The financial counselor came by that afternoon, a kind woman named Susan, who looked genuinely sorry, as she explained that 3 days of inpatient care would likely cost between $14,000 and $18,000. I signed the forms anyway. What choice did I have? Add it to the mountain of debt I already couldn't pay. On day 2, while I was sleeping, my car was towed from the hospital parking lot. 2-hour parking limit. I'd been there for 48 hours. When I found out, I wanted to cry, but I was too tired. The tow fee was $130. Storage was $35 per day. Everything I owned was in that car. My clothes, documents, my mother's photos, the USB drive with evidence against my father, all impounded. The social worker, a tired woman named Karen, visited on day 3. She'd reviewed my case. Homeless, unemployed, no insurance, massive debt, no family support. "We can get you into a shelter," she said. "Emergency housing. It's not ideal, but it's warm and safe. There's a men's shelter downtown that has space. You can stay up to 30 days while you get on your feet. And after 30 days, we'll work on that when we get there. First priority is keeping you alive and out of the cold." I was discharged that afternoon. Total bill, $14,638. Added to my existing debt, I now owed over $100,000. Karen drove me to the shelter in her own car. The building was old but clean, a converted warehouse near downtown. Inside, a large room held 50 beds in rows. Men of all ages, all circumstances. Some working but couldn't afford housing. Some dealing with addiction. Some, like me, just hit by life until they broke. The rules were simple. Check in by 10 p.m. Lights out at 10:30. Wake up at 6 a.m. Everyone out by 8 a.m. No exceptions. Had to spend days elsewhere. Couldn't just stay in the shelter. Could store 1 bag of belongings in a locker. I had no belongings to store. Everything was in my impounded car, which I couldn't afford to retrieve. I lay on a thin cot that night, listening to 50 men breathing, coughing, snoring, the smell of industrial cleaner mixed with sweat and despair. I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember what my life had been like just 2 months ago. A home, a job, a girlfriend, a future. Now, I had a cot in a homeless shelter and pneumonia. My phone, which I'd managed to keep charged using the hospital outlets, rang the next morning. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. "Collins?" A woman's voice, nervous and familiar. "Amanda, I need to talk to you about what's been happening." I sat up on the cot, keeping my voice low. "Are you calling to apologize? I need you to understand something. Dad and I are having problems. The money is running out. He's been gambling in Monte Carlo and Paris. He's lost thousands of dollars. We're fighting all the time. I'm scared, Collins. I want to come home." I waited, saying nothing. "But I need you to not make trouble when we get back. Can we work something out? Maybe Dad could pay you back something, like $5,000? And you drop the fraud claims? $5,000 out of the $88,000 they stole. Amanda, do you have any idea what my life is like right now? I know things are hard." "Hard? I'm in a homeless shelter. I have pneumonia from living in my car. I lost my job. I have over $100,000 in debt. I haven't eaten a real meal in a week. I couldn't even afford to get my car out of impound. Everything I owned is gone." Silence on the other end. "That's what you and Dad did to me. You planned it for months. You stole everything and left me to die in the cold. And now you want to negotiate? Collins, we're family. You have to forgive us eventually." Something inside me, something that had been bending and bending under the weight of everything, finally snapped. "No, I don't. You stopped being my family the day you helped him destroy my life. Don't call me again." I hung up. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't sad. For the first time in 2 months, I felt something other than despair. I felt hungry. And anger, I was learning, was better than hopelessness. I had 30 days in this shelter. 30 days to figure out my next move. I walked to the library, used their computers, and looked up the impound lot. The attendant who answered was named Steve. Gruff voice, sounded annoyed. "I need to get something from my car," I explained. "It's in your lot, 2008 Honda Civic. I can't afford the fees right now, but I need to get one item from inside. Can't access the vehicle without paying the fees. That's policy. Please, it's a USB drive. It has evidence for a legal case. It's all I have. Look, buddy, I hear hard luck stories all day. Rules are rules. I'll walk there, 4 miles. I just need you to let me look through the window. I can see where it is. Maybe you could reach in and grab it. Please." Steve was quiet for a long moment. "You got a hospital bracelet on?" I looked down at my wrist, still wearing it. "Yeah. You the guy with the Honda who was in the hospital with pneumonia?" "That's me." Another long pause. "Fine. Come by this afternoon. I'll see what I can do." I walked the 4 miles to the impound lot. My lungs still hurt, but the antibiotics were working. Steve was a big guy, maybe 60, with a permanent scowl that softened slightly when he saw me. "You look like hell," he said. "Feel worse." He took me to my car, let me look through the window. I could see the USB drive on the dashboard, right where I'd left it. Steve sighed, unlocked the door, handed me the drive. "You got 1 week before we auction the car for the fees. After that, it's gone." "Thank you." "Yeah, well, I got a son about your age. Wouldn't want him in your situation. Good luck, kid." I walked back to the shelter clutching that USB drive like it was made of gold. Because in a way, it was. It was proof. It was evidence. It was the only weapon I had against the people who destroyed me. I just needed to figure out how to use it. The library became my second home. I spent every day there, from 8 a.m. when the shelter closed until 9 p.m. when the library shut down. I used their computers, organized the evidence on the USB drive, made multiple backup copies. The more I studied those emails between my father and Amanda, the more I understood just how calculated this had been. They hadn't just stolen from me. They'd systematically planned my destruction. I found a document I'd missed before, buried in a subfolder, labeled simply Plan, Docs. When I opened it, my blood went cold. It was a timeline, a detailed, month-by-month plan stretching back 11 months. Month 1, November last year. Started online poker. Down 15,000. Need to cover losses before C notices. Month 2, December. Casino trip. Lost another 15,000. Total gambling debt now 30,000. Credit cards maxed. Need new source of funds. C has perfect credit. Month 3, January. Approached Amanda about using C's credit. She's on board if she gets half for Europe trip. Beginning research on identity theft methods. Month 4, February. Successfully opened first credit card in C's name. 15,000 limit. C, completely unaware. This is easier than expected. Month 5, March. Personal loan approved. 28,000. Paid off immediate gambling debts. C, still hasn't checked his credit. He trusts me, completely. Month 6, April. Gambling debts now 75,000 total. One more big account should cover everything. Researching home equity lines. Month 7, May. Got C to sign HELOC papers. Told him property taxes. 45,000 approved. Total accessed. 88,000. Enough to clear all debts and fund 6-month Europe trip. Month 8, June. Isolation phase begins. Contacted C's employer with concerns about his character. Planted seeds with family members about his mental instability. When fraud discovered, no one will believe him. Month 9, July. Contacted C's friends and girlfriend. Spread stories, building narrative that C is unstable and manipulative. Cutting off his support system. Month 10, August. Booked flights to Europe. September departure. Planned to be gone 6 months. By then, C's credit destroyed. No support system. No resources. We'll file bankruptcy in his name remotely. When we return, we're clean. Month 11. September. Day of departure. Blocked C's number. Left him with nothing. He'll figure it out eventually, but too late. No money, no lawyer, no way to fight back. Month 12. October. In Europe. C should be discovering everything now. Even if he goes to police, it's his word against ours. We have signatures, paper trail, untouchable. I read that timeline 5 times. Every detail of my suffering had been planned. The isolation, the financial destruction, the timing, all of it calculated to leave me powerless. But there was more. I kept digging through the emails and found more recent ones, from just 2 weeks ago. Amanda to Gregory. I'm worried about coming back. What if he really did go to the police? Gregory's response. He won't. He's too weak. And even if he did, we covered our tracks. We say he authorized everything. He's homeless, unemployed, broke. Who's going to believe him over us? Another email from Amanda, more recent. The money's running out faster than we planned. You need to stop gambling. Gregory. Mind your business. I'll gamble if I want. We have enough. Amanda. We don't. At this rate, we'll be broke before we get home. Maybe we should come back early. Gregory. No. We're staying the full 6 months. I earned this vacation. More emails showed them fighting. Amanda worried about money. Gregory, defensive about his gambling losses. Their perfect plan falling apart. There was a spreadsheet attached to one email. Amanda had been tracking my credit accounts, celebrating each approval like a victory. Next to my personal loan entry, she'd written, another 28,000 down. C is so trusting, lol. Lol. She'd laughed about destroying my life. I saved everything to 3 different USB drives, uploaded copies to a secure cloud service using a new email account. This evidence couldn't be lost. Then I went back to Jordan Walsh's office. No appointment, just walked in and asked the receptionist if I could wait to see him. She looked at my clothes, my appearance, probably realized I was homeless. But something in my face made her agree. Jordan came out an hour later, surprised to see me. Collins? I have more evidence. A lot more. Can you look at it? We went to his office. I plugged in the USB drive and showed him everything. The plan document, the timeline, the spreadsheet, the emails showing premeditation, intent, conspiracy. Jordan's expression changed as he read. From professional interest to genuine anger. This is prosecution-level evidence, he said quietly. This isn't just identity theft. This is conspiracy, wire fraud, elder abuse for the inheritance theft. Your father could get serious prison time for this. Will you take my case? On contingency. If we win, I take 30% of any recovered funds. If we lose, you owe me nothing. But I need you to understand, this is going to be a fight. We're pressing criminal charges. The police will need to get involved. I'm ready. Jordan made some calls. That afternoon, I met with Detective Sarah Martinez, Financial Crimes Division. She was maybe 40, sharp eyes, no-nonsense attitude. She'd been investigating financial crimes for 12 years. I showed her everything. She went through it methodically, asking questions, taking notes. When she finished, she looked up at me. This is one of the clearest cases of family financial abuse I've ever seen. The plan document alone is enough for charges. Everything else is just icing. What happens now? I issue warrants for both your father and sister. They're due back in the country early December, according to their return flights. We'll arrest them at customs. They won't see it coming. My sister, too? She's an accomplice. The emails show active participation. Conspiracy. She's not innocent. Part of me felt bad about Amanda. Then I remembered the spreadsheet, the lull next to my suffering. I didn't feel bad anymore. Jordan and Detective Martinez worked together over the next 2 weeks, filed disputes with all 3 credit bureaus on my behalf, submitted fraud affidavits to every creditor. The collection calls started to slow as accounts were flagged for investigation. My credit would still be destroyed for months, maybe a year, but at least the process had started. Then something unexpected happened. I got a message through the library computer from Patricia Thompson, the real homeowner whose nephew had scammed me. She'd seen my name on the police report, contacted the detective to connect our cases. She wanted to talk. We met at a coffee shop. Patricia bought me lunch, the first real meal I'd had in weeks. She explained that after her nephew's scam, she'd felt terrible about what happened to me and the others. She'd filed charges against him too. "I have a spare room," she said. "My actual spare room, legally rentable, $500 a month, month to month. You can pay me when you find work. No deposit needed." I stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because my nephew betrayed my trust and hurt innocent people. Because I understand what it's like when family turns on you. And because you need help, and I can provide it." I wanted to cry, but managed to hold it together. "I'll pay you back. Every cent." "I know you will." Finding work was still hard with destroyed credit, but I applied everywhere. Finally got hired at a 24-hour diner called the Bluebird. Graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. $10 an hour plus tips. Dishwashing, basic prep work. The manager, Diana, was maybe 50, kind eyes, didn't ask too many questions. "You show up on time, work hard, we won't have problems," she said. "Credit checks are for management positions. I just need someone reliable." "I'm reliable." "Good. You start tomorrow." I moved into Patricia's house 3 days before Thanksgiving. A real room with a real bed, my first since the shelter. Patricia even gave me some basic furniture she wasn't using. A desk, a lamp, a chair. That first night in a real bed, in a warm room, with a door that locked, I couldn't sleep. I kept waiting for something to go wrong, for someone to take it away, but nothing happened. The room stayed warm. The bed stayed soft. I was safe. Detective Martinez called me in early December. "They land tomorrow morning. American Airlines, Flight 362, arriving at 8:15 a.m. We'll be waiting." "Can I be there?" "No. But I'll call you after the arrest." The next day, I worked my shift at the diner, barely able to focus. My phone rang at 9:43 a.m. "They're in custody," Detective Martinez said. "Both of them. Arrested at customs. Bail hearing tomorrow." I sat down in the diner's back room, suddenly shaking. It was happening. After everything, they were finally facing consequences. The bail hearing was the next afternoon. Jordan took me with him. I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as my father and sister were brought in wearing jail jumpsuits. Gregory looked tan, healthy, wearing an expensive watch they hadn't confiscated yet. He glanced around the courtroom with something like contempt. Amanda looked terrified, kept looking at the floor. The prosecutor presented the evidence. The judge reviewed the plan document, the emails. His expression grew harder with each page. Amanda's public defender requested to approach the bench. There was a hurried conversation. Then Amanda's lawyer announced she wanted to make a deal. Gregory's lawyer objected furiously. But Amanda kept talking. She'd testify against Gregory in exchange for reduced charges. She had more evidence. Voice recordings of their planning conversations, text messages, photos of Gregory gambling in Monaco and Paris, losing thousands. She also revealed something I didn't know. Gregory had planned to flee to Thailand after the bankruptcy was filed. Had researched visa requirements, cost of living, extradition treaties. He wasn't planning to come back at all. Gregory's face went red. He started shouting at Amanda, calling her a traitor. The bailiff had to restrain him. The judge made his decision quickly. Gregory, denied bail, flight risk, severity of charges, trial date set for March. Amanda, released on bail with ankle monitor, surrendered passport, restricted contact with Gregory. Gregory was led away, still shouting. Amanda stood there crying, not looking at anyone. I felt nothing watching them. No satisfaction, no anger, just a strange emptiness. Outside the courthouse, Jordan explained what came next. Civil lawsuit for damages, recovery of funds, criminal trial for Gregory. Months of waiting. But we have him, Jordan said. The evidence is overwhelming. He's going to prison. I went home to Patricia's house, to my warm room with its real bed. I thought about my father in a jail cell, about Amanda in her friend's spare room with an ankle monitor. I thought about the plan document, the timeline of my destruction, and I realized something important. They'd spent 11 months planning to break me, but they'd failed. I was still here, broke, damaged, struggling, but alive, working, fighting back. They hadn't won. Not yet. March arrived with cold rain and gray skies. 4 months since my father's arrest. 4 months of working graveyard shifts at the Bluebird, living in Patricia's spare room, slowly rebuilding from nothing. I'd saved almost $3,000. Not much, but more than I'd had in months. Tips at the diner were good, especially once word got around about what had happened to me. People left extra. One regular left a $100 tip with a note. Keep fighting. The trial started on a Monday. Jordan had prepared me for weeks. What to expect, what to say, how to handle cross-examination. Gregory had refused every plea deal, insisting he'd done nothing wrong. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Gregory sat at the defense table wearing a suit his lawyer had brought him, looking calm and confident. Amanda sat in the witness section, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The prosecutor was a woman named Catherine Park, mid-40s, sharp and thorough. She laid out the case methodically. Showed the jury the plan document first. Let them see the 11-month timeline of premeditation. Then the emails between Gregory and Amanda, the forged signatures, the fraudulent accounts. Gregory's lawyer tried to argue I'd authorized everything, that this was a family financial arrangement gone wrong. But the evidence was overwhelming. Amanda testified on day 3. She walked to the stand looking 10 years older than her 24 years. Under oath, she told everything. How Gregory had approached her with the plan. How he'd manipulated her, promised her a share of the money for the Europe trip. How they'd researched identity theft methods together. How Gregory had practiced forging my signature. How he'd instructed her to spread rumors about my mental health to family and friends. She described watching him gamble in Monaco, losing thousands of dollars we'd stolen from me. Said he'd been furious when she tried to make him stop. That he'd told her I was weak and stupid and deserved what we did to him. Amanda cried during her testimony. Whether from genuine remorse or fear of prosecution, I couldn't tell. Didn't really care. On day 4, I testified. Catherine Park walked me through everything, living at home to help after Mom died. The morning they left for Europe, finding the stolen money, the housing scam, living in my car, the pneumonia, the homeless shelter. I spoke calmly, factually. Let the events speak for themselves. Gregory's lawyer tried to rattle me during cross-examination. Suggested I'd been irresponsible with money, that I'd actually authorized the accounts and was now lying. Asked why, I'd never checked my credit if I was so concerned. Because I trusted my father, I said simply. I believed family meant something. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, every one of them looked at Gregory with disgust. Guilty on all counts. 7 counts of identity theft, 3 counts of wire fraud, 5 counts of forgery, 1 count of elder abuse for stealing my inheritance. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge was a stern man in his 60s who'd clearly seen enough criminals for 1 lifetime. Mr. Gregory, he said, looking down from the bench, you systematically destroyed your own son's life to feed a gambling addiction. You showed premeditation, calculation, and an astounding lack of remorse. This court finds your actions especially heinous because they targeted a family member who trusted you implicitly. 12 years in federal prison. Must pay restitution of $112,000. All assets to be liquidated to satisfy the judgment. Gregory's face went white. His lawyer immediately filed notice of appeal, but Jordan said it wouldn't matter. The evidence was too strong. Amanda got 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and had to pay $30,000 in restitution. She'd avoided prison by testifying, but her life was effectively ruined. No job would hire her with a fraud conviction. She'd lost all her friends when the truth came out. The civil case settled quickly after the criminal conviction. Gregory's house was sold. After the mortgage payoff and various liens, I received $68,000. Not the full amount I'd lost, but substantial. More money than I'd ever had at once. The court also ordered Gregory's pension garnished when he eventually got out of prison. I'd be receiving payments for years. I used the settlement money carefully, paid off every fraudulent debt in full, got written confirmations from every creditor, filed final disputes with the credit bureaus. Within 3 months, my credit score had climbed to 685. Not perfect, but functional. I kept working at the Bluebird. Diana had promoted me to assistant manager after 3 months, impressed by my reliability. The pay jumped to $42,000 a year. Not a fortune, but stable income, with benefits. Patricia refused to raise my rent even when I offered. "You're a good tenant," she said, "and a good person. I'm not interested in profiting from you." I started saving seriously. Emergency fund first. $8,000 tucked away where I couldn't touch it. Then saving for a deposit on my own apartment. Something else changed too. The diner attracted a regular crowd, and I got to know some of them. One was a teacher named Laura, early 30s, who came in for breakfast after her morning shift at the elementary school. We started talking, then talking more, then exchanging numbers. I told her everything on our third date. The whole story, no filters. I'd learned that hiding trauma doesn't make it go away. Laura listened quietly, then said, "That's a lot to survive." "Yeah, you must be incredibly strong." "I don't feel strong. That's how I know you are." We started dating officially in April. Took it slow, both of us cautious in our own ways. But it felt right, felt healthy. She didn't try to fix me or save me. She just saw me, all of me, and stayed anyway. In May, Amanda sent me a letter through Jordan's office. She was in court-mandated therapy, working 2 jobs to pay restitution. The letter was long, detailed, taking full responsibility for everything. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just wanted me to know she was sorry. I read it 3 times over a week. Thought about responding. Wrote several drafts. Finally, I wrote 1 sentence. "I hope you find a way to live with what you did. I'm finding a way to live without you." I never sent it, but writing it helped somehow. I wasn't ready to forgive her, might never be, but I didn't hate her anymore either. She was just a person who'd made terrible choices and would live with those consequences. Not my problem, not my responsibility. My old coworker Marcus reached out in June, apologized for how he'd treated me, for believing the lies, for demanding his money back when I had nothing. He'd heard about the trial, felt terrible, asked if we could reconnect. I met him for coffee. He bought, insisted on it. We talked for 2 hours. He explained he'd been scared of losing his job, had panicked. Not an excuse, but an explanation. "I forgive you," I told him, "but I won't forget. There's a difference." "That's fair," he said. "More than fair." We weren't close friends after that, but we were friendly. Enough. My credit score hit 700 in July. I started apartment hunting for real, looking at 1-bedroom places in safe neighborhoods. Found one in August, $900 a month, utilities included. Small but clean, good location, professional management. I signed the lease on a Wednesday, exactly 1 year after my father had left for Europe. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Patricia helped me move in, brought a housewarming gift, a framed photo she'd taken of me at the diner, smiling at something someone had said. I looked tired in the picture but happy. "So you remember," she said, "where you were, where you are, where you're going." Laura came by with pizza. We ate sitting on my floor since I didn't have furniture yet. Diana from the diner dropped off a care package. Dishes, towels, basic kitchen supplies. Even Marcus stopped by, brought a 6-pack of beer, and apologized again. That evening, sitting on my new couch in my mostly empty apartment, my phone buzzed. A text from Jordan. "First restitution payment processed. $200 deposited to your account. $200 out of 112,000. It would take Gregory decades to repay everything, sending money from prison wages and eventually his garnished pension. But it was a start. Acknowledgement that what he'd done was real, had consequences, couldn't be ignored. I looked around my apartment. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, bathroom that was mine alone. Not much by most standards, but to me, it was everything. I thought about where I'd been a year ago, sitting in my car in a freezing parking lot, broke and broken, no hope in sight. I thought about the homeless shelter, the pneumonia, the moment I'd wanted to just give up, and I thought about where I was now. My own place, a job with benefits and a future, money and savings. People who cared about me, not because they had to, but because they chose to. A girlfriend who saw my scars and didn't run. A landlady who'd shown me more kindness than my own father ever had. My phone rang. "Detective Martinez. Collins, thought you'd want to know. Gregory's appeal was denied. The sentence stands. He'll serve the full 12 years, minus time for good behavior if he earns it. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for not giving up. Cases like this, when the victim is family, they usually don't press charges. You did. You fought back. That matters." After she hung up, I sat in the quiet of my new apartment and let myself feel something I hadn't allowed in a long time. Pride, not in some grandiose way, just quiet recognition that I'd survived something designed to destroy me, that I'd been pushed to the absolute edge and hadn't jumped, that I'd found a way to fight back when I had nothing left to fight with. My father had spent 11 months planning my destruction. He'd stolen everything, isolated me, tried to break me completely. He'd looked at his own son and decided I was disposable, useful only as a source of money to fund his gambling addiction. And I'd survived anyway. Not just survived. I was rebuilding. Slowly, carefully, but genuinely. Laura texted. "How's the new place? Want company tomorrow? Place is great. Company would be better. Come over after your shift? It's a date." I made myself dinner in my new kitchen. Nothing fancy, just pasta and sauce from a jar. But it was mine, in my home, in my space that nobody could take away. Before bed, I stood at my window looking out at the street below. Normal people walking dogs, coming home from work, living their ordinary lives. I used to be one of them before everything fell apart. Now I was becoming one of them again. My father had tried to teach me a lesson with his betrayal. He'd wanted me to learn that I was worthless, that family was a lie, that trust was weakness. But I'd learned something different. I'd learned that my worth wasn't determined by people who couldn't see it. That family wasn't about blood, but about loyalty and love, and showing up when it mattered. Patricia, Diana, Laura, even Jordan and Detective Martinez, they'd been more family to me than my father ever was. I'd learned that betrayal was survivable, that rock bottom could be a foundation instead of an ending, that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, that forgiveness wasn't required, but bitterness was optional. I'd learned that I was stronger than I ever knew. The people who'd abandoned me, the ones who'd believed my father's lies, who'd turned away when I needed them, They'd shown me who they really were, and I'd believed them. I didn't need them to succeed. I didn't need their approval or their apology or their return. I just needed myself and the courage to start over. And I'd found that courage in the darkest places. In a homeless shelter, in a stranger's kindness, in the simple act of getting up every morning and trying again. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from an unknown number. "This is your father. I want you to know I forgive you for what you've done to this family. When I get out, I expect you to make this right." I read it twice, then blocked the number without responding. He still didn't understand. Still saw himself as the victim. Still thought he could manipulate me. But his power over me was gone. He was just a man in a prison cell, facing consequences he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. And I was a man in his own apartment, building a life he could never touch again. I deleted the message and went to bed. Tomorrow, I had a shift at the diner. Laura was coming over in the evening. I needed to start furniture shopping this weekend. Normal problems, normal plans. The nightmare was over. My life was beginning again. And I was going to be just fine. Better than fine. I was going to be free. Let me ask you something. If someone you trusted completely betrayed you, took everything from you, would you have the strength to rebuild? Would you press charges against family, or would you let it go to keep the peace? I fought back, but the choice isn't always clear. What would you do in my situation? If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about trust, betrayal, or the strength it takes to start over, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about real people facing impossible situations and finding their way through. Share this with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that rock bottom isn't the end. And drop a comment telling me your thoughts. Have you ever had to rebuild from nothing? How did you find the strength? Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was long, and I know it was heavy, but I wanted you to understand that no matter how dark things get, no matter how much someone tries to break you, you have the power to survive and rebuild. You're stronger than you know. Take care of yourselves, trust carefully, and remember that your worth isn't determined by people who fail to see it. Until next time, keep fighting, keep rebuilding, keep believing you deserve better, because you do.